The old city clock tower sat in a wide square that felt wrong at night, its stone face tired and uneven under weak lamps, and as I approached, small details began to unsettle me. The security camera near the street was angled away from the entrance, the lamp above the steps flickered like it couldn't decide whether to stay on, and the tea cart that was always there during the day stood abandoned. Not closed, just empty, as if the vendor had stepped away at las 12:08. Stood beneath the tower, pretending to check my phone while my heart pounded loudly in my ears, and at exactly 12:10, the tower chimed once only, once which felt less like a clock marking time and more like a signal. A hooded figure stepped out from behind a pillar, tall and motionless, face hidden, gloved hands relaxed at his sides, moving with the calm confidence of someone who believed the night belonged to him. "Key?" he said, without greeting or explanation. I held it up but didn't hand it over and asked who he was, and he tilted his head slightly, as if deciding how much effort I deserved. "Someone cleaning up your mistake," he replied. I told him I hadn't stolen anything, and he gave a soft laugh without warmth. "You picked up property from a scene," he said. "That makes you involved." His glove caught the light, and I noticed it looked wet, but not with rain, and my chest tightened as I realized I might be standing near someone who had recently touched something he didn't want traced. When I asked what scene he meant, he gestured toward the tower and said a theft had gone wrong years ago, that a man had died, and that evidence powerful enough to destroy everyone involved had been locked away hidden, where only that key could open it. I stepped back, and he stepped forward, closing the distance without rushing, and that slow control was worse than violence, because it told me he wasn't too afraid of time. When I demanded to know where the police were, he looked at me as if the question itself was naive. "This isn't a police problem," he said, then glanced past me, and I felt my blood turn cold because I realized he was checking positions. I turned slightly and saw shapes at the edges of the square, one near an alley, another near the tea cart, another across the street, under a lamp spread out deliberately, like pieces placed on a board. "We don't have much time," the hooded man said, pointing toward a narrow metal door at the base of the tower, flush with the stone like it had been designed to disappear. "Open it," he said. "Put the key where it belongs." I whispered that I wasn't going down there, and for the first time his voice sharpened. "You already are," he said, and that certainty pushed me forward more effectively than any shove. The metal door had a tiny keyhole shaped like an eye, and when I slid the brass key into it, it fit perfectly like it had been waiting, and when I turned it, the click sounded far too loud in the empty square. The door opened inward, and cold air rose from below like the tower exhaling something it had been holding for years. Stairs descended into darkness, and the hooded man's hand rested lightly on my shoulder, guiding rather than forcing. And that gentleness was the most frightening part, because it meant he could afford it. "First," he said, I went down slowly, phone light shaking, the air growing colder and heavier with each step until it felt like the stone itself was absorbing warmth. At the bottom was a small underground room lit by a single buzzing bulb, and along the walls were names scratched into the stone, dozens of them, some faded with age, others fresh and deep, marked with dates and symbols. And I understood I wasn't standing in a hiding place, but in a record. In the center sat a metal locker with a keypad, beside a small table dusted with fingerprints that told me people had been there recently. "Open it," the hooded man said. "You know the code." I snapped that I didn't, and he nodded toward my pocket. I pulled out the photograph again and saw the number written neatly on the back. 12:10. My hands trembled as I entered it, and the locker opened with a soft, obedient click that made my stomach turn. Inside was a velvet pouch heavy with jewelry and a small black notebook bound with a rubber band. And the hooded man reached for the notebook immediately, revealing his urgency. Jewelry was risked, but the notebook was power. Acting on instinct, I grabbed the notebook first and stepped back. When I asked what it was, his calm finally cracked. "Put that down," he said, and the air felt sharper. I opened it anyway and saw pages filled with names, addresses, dates, and notes like courier, pickup, and safe house. And one word appeared again and again. Replacement. Beside one entry, written darker than the rest, was a name that felt like a title marquee. Klinger, and I understood the letter on the key was anti-random. It was a signature. I whispered that it was a list of people, and he moved toward me, telling me. I didn't understand what I was holding, but before he could reach me, the bulb flickered and footsteps echoed from the stairs. Careful, controlled more than one. My heart slammed as I realized the figures from the square were coming down. The hooded man's attention shifted for a fraction of a second, and that was enough. I threw the velvet pouch across the room, and it burst against the wall, jewelry flashing under the bulb like bait. The hooded man lunged toward it on reflex, and I ran up the stairs, notebook clenched to my chest. Behind me, voices rose urgent and overlapping, and then a heavy thud echoed from below like a body hitting stone. But I didn't look back, because looking back is how you lose. I burst into the square, gasping, rain hitting my face, and the city felt suddenly too open. I ran not toward the police station, which felt predictable, but toward the hospital, the one place with constant lights, cameras, and people. I sprinted through streets blurred with reflections, expecting a hand to grab me at any moment, and when I burst into the emergency entrance, the sliding doors opened like a miracle. I slammed the notebook onto the security desk and demanded the police be called, and for a terrifying moment the guard hesitated, unsure whether I was dangerous or desperate, but then my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number that made my stomach drop before I even read it. You didn't read the last page. My hands went cold as I flipped through the notebook, and at the end I saw my name written neatly, with tonight's date beside it, and beneath it, in darker ink, one word: replacement. I understood then that replacement wasn't a threat of death, but a role that someone else, his place in the system, had opened, and I had been chosen to fill it. The key wasn't lost. It was placed. The photo wasn't proof. It was paperwork. The meeting wasn't a confrontation. It was unvoiding. I backed away from the desk, and from behind me came a soft, deliberate scraping, sound metal on metal like a key being tested in a lock. And when I turned, I saw a gloved hand holding a brass key identical to mine, stamped again with the letter M, proving there was always another way in, always another person ready to take your place. If this story kept you listening till the end, please hit like. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe for more dark murder mysteries and horror stories every week, and comment below. Would you have picked up the key or walked Hawaii?